This isn't just another video. This is an expedition into the forbidden corridors of human nature itself. We are about to lift the veil on a collection of research so volatile, so disruptive to the official story of civilization, that it was sealed away under the banner of national security. What you're about to hear was never meant for public ears. In the next few moments, you will receive a key, not a metaphorical one, but a conceptual weapon, a tool that unlocks the invisible framework driving female behavior when civilization begins to collapse. It's a code that has revealed itself again and again, in the frost-bitten camps of Siberia, in the disease-choked alleys of medieval Europe, and on the tilting decks of ships moments before they disappeared beneath the waves. This knowledge was not buried because it lacked evidence. It was buried because its implications were too dangerous, too revealing. The engineers of our modern world could not afford for you to see what those who faced humanity's darkest hours had already documented in blood and silence. Before we descend, a word for those who seek truth over comfort. If you are done with polished lies and ready for the raw anatomy of human behavior, my ebook, The Black Book of Human Nature, is your field guide. It breaks down the forbidden mechanics of psychology and power, not as theory, but as living reality. The link awaits in the pinned comment. Now steel yourself. Our journey doesn't begin in a university lecture hall or a tidy psychology lab. It begins in the white wasteland of a Siberian prison camp in the dead of winter, 1952, where survival stripped humanity to its barest code and every instinct was put to the test. The air is a blade, 40 degrees below zero. Somewhere in the endless whiteness of Siberia, a man named Ivan, once a celebrated engineer, now reduced to prisoner number 472, fights to stay alive. His crime? A careless joke about the wrong party official. His punishment? A slow-motion death by frost, hunger, and humiliation. But Ivan clings to something the guards cannot confiscate. Every few weeks, a tattered envelope arrives. Inside, hope. Letters from his wife, Anya. She writes of her devotion, her prayers, her undying faith that he will return. She promises to wait, no matter how long. Those pages are his heartbeat. His rations are worthless compared to them. He trades his bread for a pencil stub just to write back. Every word he sends out is a lifeline thrown into the storm. For years, this fragile connection keeps him human. Then silence. Weeks pass, then months. The guards laugh. The mail is empty. Ivan's mind starts to fracture. Maybe she's sick, maybe she's dead, maybe she was taken too. Then a new prisoner arrives from Ivan's hometown. Ivan asks about Anya with trembling lips. The man's eyes drop to the snow. She's alive, he says quietly. She remarried the commandant of your local prison. They have a child. She tells people you died a hero. Something inside Ivan dies at that moment. Not from the cold, not from starvation, but from truth. The bond that once defined his humanity turns to ash. Ivan's tragedy wasn't unique. Across the entire network of the Gulag Archipelago, this same story repeated itself, again and again. And the Soviets, in their obsession with record-keeping, documented every betrayal, every remarriage, every official widow. Without intending to, they created the largest and most merciless psychological experiment ever run on human loyalty. The results, too dangerous to publish. Too damning to fit the myth of the new Soviet woman. So they buried it deep. But patterns don't stay buried forever. They whisper through history. In 1665, London became a graveyard. The Great Plague devoured the city. In diaries of the time, like that of Samuel Pepys, we find chilling glimpses into human nature under siege. One story tells of Mrs. Harvey, once praised for her devotion to her sick husband. But when the fatal boils appeared on his body, she gathered her children, her jewels, and fled. She didn't hold his hand. She didn't close his eyes. She ran because death was contagious and survival demanded selfishness. She wasn't evil, she was human. She was following code written long before language. The Code of Survival. Historians skim over these entries, but they reveal something profound. When crisis strips away comfort, loyalty becomes conditional. The vow of for better or worse holds only as long as worse doesn't mean certain death. Fast forward to the 1960s. Anthropologist Colin Turnbull traveled to Uganda to study the Ik, a tribe destroyed by famine. What he found horrified him, a society where empathy itself had starved to death. Parents stole from their own children. Children mocked the dying. Love, compassion, pair bonding, all gone. Turnbull published his findings in The Mountain People. His colleagues were furious. They accused him of lying, of cruelty, of slandering humanity. Because his data shattered the illusion that civilization is permanent, that goodness is intrinsic. But Turnbull had seen the truth. Civilization is a costume we wear when our bellies are full. When hunger arrives, the costume burns, the pattern repeats. Berlin, 1945. The war is lost. The currency isn't paper, it's food, cigarettes, protection. The social order collapses and loyalty reorganizes itself around whoever can provide. Allied psychologists quietly interviewed hundreds of women in post-war Germany. They found what they called rapid affiliation shift. In plain language, survival first, vows later. Those files were stamped restricted and sealed away, because the implication was too terrifying to admit, that a woman's loyalty, like any other instinct, follows the gravitational pull of security. Now picture the Titanic. Women and children first, the ultimate symbol of chivalry, but buried within the numbers lies a secret pattern. Psychologist Dr. John B. Curry, years later, noticed something strange. Unmarried women had a much higher survival rate than wives who stayed by their husbands' sides. The difference wasn't love, it was instinct. Those without a bond acted fast. Those tied by loyalty hesitated. Many went down with the men they refused to abandon. The ocean does not reward sentiment, it rewards speed. The Titanic was more than a tragedy. It was an X-ray of human nature in real time. When the ship sank, the mask of morality slipped, and the primal algorithm of survival revealed itself. Across gulags, plagues, famines, and shipwrecks, the story is the same. Civilization is a thin veneer. Love, loyalty, marriage, they are luxuries built on abundance. When the structure collapses, so does the illusion. What remains is the oldest commandment written in the language of DNA. Survive, that is the black truth. That is the heart of the black pill. It begins with a quiet acceptance. The realization that the world does not owe you fairness, kindness, or happy endings. That the story you were told as a boy of loyalty being rewarded, of love being unconditional, was never a story meant for you. It was a script written to keep you playing a role that no longer exists. This is the wound that runs through the heart of the modern man. A wound not carved by bullets or chains, but by silence. The silence that follows after every sacrifice is met not with gratitude, but indifference. You build, you protect, you provide. You hold the line because you were told that doing so ensures loyalty. But history whispers a colder truth. Every time the fortress shakes, every time the wind changes, the same story unfolds again. When the crisis deepens, you are not the king protected by the walls, you are the wall itself. And when the storm tears through, you are expected to collapse quietly so others may survive. This is not resentment speaking. It is recognition. Recognition that clarity, though brutal, is liberating. It cuts away illusion. It burns like frostbite, but in that pain lies freedom, the kind of freedom that comes when you finally see the rules of a game you never knew you were playing. That clarity becomes a torch. You begin to see patterns where before you saw chaos in history, in relationships, in every desperate act of survival disguised as morality. We've looked at the frozen hell of the Gulag, at sinking ships and famine-stricken streets, where human nature was stripped down to its raw circuitry. But the lesson didn't end there. Because the battlefield changed, not the biology. The weapons changed, not the instinct. Today the war is quieter, colder. The chains are digital, the cages invisible. The modern crisis is not a gunshot, it's a slow suffocation of purpose. Laws, narratives, algorithms all tuned to one frequency: control. The resource now is not grain or gold, but attention, validation, and legal power. The fortress of the modern man is no longer built from stone, but from contracts, careers, and quiet compromises. And yet the walls crumble just the same. Meet Alex, a man you may recognize. He does everything right, works the long hours, builds the home, secures the future. He believes in the ancient equation: effort equals loyalty, loyalty equals love, love equals legacy. But then comes the slow crisis: a lost job, a fading spark, a period of weakness that no one warned him would test the very foundation of his existence. And that's when the program activates. The instinct buried deep within evolutionary code. The behavior seen not only in jungles but in modern suburbs. It's called the branch swing, the migration from one provider to another, dressed in the language of empowerment. The data doesn't lie. Hidden in sociological journals, behind sterile academic phrasing, is a truth no one dares to speak aloud. The vast majority of divorces are initiated not in the wake of violence or betrayal, but in the shadow of lost status. When the man falters, even briefly, the fortress is abandoned. 70%, that's the number. 70% of divorces initiated by women. And when you filter it through the lens of income and employment, the pattern sharpens to a knife's edge. When a man loses his footing, the likelihood of being left skyrockets. This isn't conspiracy, it's continuity. The same survival script that once determined life and death in the famine now plays out through legal paperwork and hashtags. The Gulag's cold judgment has become the courtroom's quiet verdict. The commandant who took Anya is now the faceless state that promises provision without partnership, protection without loyalty. And so Ivan becomes Alex. Not behind barbed wire, but behind mortgage payments. Not awaiting execution, but enduring erasure, a slow unmaking of everything he built. The marriage, the children, the home, dismantled by process servers and polite signatures. And yet when the dust settles, one truth remains. The male role has been made redundant, not by war, but by design. The welfare state is the new provider. The system itself has become the surrogate mate, offering security, validation, and independence in exchange for allegiance. The man's body still labors, his mind still invents, his hands still build the infrastructure of the world, but his value has been abstracted, monetized, and discarded. He is needed but not wanted, present but invisible, and here in this quiet apocalypse begins the next chapter of our investigation. Because the story of Ivan was never confined to Siberia. It is the story of every man who has realized, too late, that loyalty is a luxury only granted when the storm is mild. We now step into the modern frontier, a world where the chains are velvet, the cages are digital, and the betrayal is polite. This is not the end of the story. It is the next evolution of it, the slow, psychological unraveling of the masculine spirit. The data is there. The silence is deafening, and the truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. Throughout most of human history, a woman's very survival was tied to the men in her life. Her father's house was her shelter, her husband's labor her security. This arrangement wasn't just cultural, it was biological insurance against the chaos of the world. It forged a powerful incentive for women to protect those bonds, to endure, to remain loyal even through famine, war, and hardship. But the 20th century altered that ancient contract. The rise of industrial economies and social welfare created a new, more stable provider, not a man, but the state. Through a vast network of programs, welfare checks, subsidized housing, alimony laws, child support enforcement, the government became the quiet replacement for the husband. It was a revolution no one declared, but everyone felt. The need for male provision began to erode. For the first time in history, A woman could leave a man and still eat, still live, still raise children under the watchful arm of an invisible patron, the bureaucratic state. This isn't conspiracy, it's arithmetic. Every data set from the mid-20th century onward shows the same curve. As welfare expands, marriage declines. As social programs multiply, single motherhood rises. The state, in all its administrative benevolence, unintentionally dismantled the male pillar of the family. Why stay with a man who struggles when the system guarantees stability? Why forgive imperfection when a legal structure stands ready to redistribute his labor through the courts? The new provider never tires, never falters, never gets sick, and most importantly, never demands loyalty in return. But beneath the surface of this social transformation lies something darker, the psychological blueprint of how human behavior adapts to new incentives. Just as intelligence agencies mapped the minds of foreign leaders, psychologists began mapping mating and loyalty strategies under changing conditions. The work of researchers like Dr. David Buss revealed consistent truths. Across cultures and eras, women prioritize stability, protection, and resource potential in their long-term choices. These patterns, once balanced by dependence on a single man, are now dispersed across systems, careers, and government safety nets. But there's another layer, one that is rarely discussed openly. Modern psychology has begun applying the study of dark traits not only to men, but to women, exploring how narcissism, manipulation, and social psychopathy express themselves differently across genders. Where the male dark triad is blunt, domination, aggression, power, the female counterpart operates in the shadows. It's relational, strategic, emotional. It weaponizes empathy itself. The crazy X stereotype becomes less of a joke and more of a behavioral pattern, one that thrives in a culture where emotional narratives hold legal weight. A woman high in Machiavellian traits doesn't need physical force. She has social systems and sympathetic institutions. She can rewrite a man's story with a few well-placed words. I'm scared. He's unstable. I just want to protect my children. And with that, entire state mechanisms move into motion. Let's illustrate this. Mark was a quiet achiever, a software engineer who built his world around stability. He met a woman full of life and charisma, and for a while, they built something real. But when illness struck, when his productivity faded and his salary fell, the quiet transformation began. Her tone shifted, her admiration turned to critique, his exhaustion became mood swings, his silence became emotional abuse. She began documenting, preparing, rehearsing a story, and one morning the doorbell rang, a police officer serving him a restraining order. He hadn't hit anyone, he hadn't yelled, but the system doesn't gamble with liability. Better safe than sorry. Within days, he was out, his house, his family, his savings frozen behind legal glass. Then came the divorce, the custody filings, the garnished wages, each step executed with bureaucratic precision. Her survival was never in question. His was. Mark's story isn't an isolated tragedy. It's a digital archetype, replicated across men's forums, legal records, and broken homes. A collection of human casualties in a system that rewards strategic victimhood over mutual endurance. The emotional journey of confronting this reality is brutal. First comes disbelief, this can't be true. Then recognition, I've seen this happen. And finally, the cold acceptance, this is how the system works. To understand is not to hate. This isn't an indictment of women as individuals. It's an indictment of a framework that monetizes emotional fracture. Women are simply responding to evolved instincts optimized for security, instincts that once protected life itself, but now operate in a distorted environment of artificial safety. The anger many men feel is not misdirected, it's misunderstood. The enemy isn't feminine nature. It's the system that engineered a world where loyalty no longer has economic meaning. So where does that leave the modern man? In the rubble of the old order, a new archetype is emerging. One who no longer builds his identity on conditional love or external validation. A man who no longer anchors his worth to his income, his usefulness, or his approval rating in the eyes of others. He builds inward, a citadel of purpose, discipline, and clarity. He understands the world as it is, not as he was told it would be. He knows that survival today means sovereignty, financial, emotional, and spiritual. This is not nihilism. It's transcendence. Because once a man accepts the harsh laws of nature and society, he becomes unbreakable. His peace no longer depends on who stays or who leaves. His worth no longer rises and falls with fortune or affection. He becomes the storm, not its victim. We began with history, with fathers, husbands, and the survival of women through dependence. But the arc ends here, with men learning that their own survival no longer depends on being needed, but on being whole. This is the final evolution of masculinity, not dominance, not control, but absolute clarity. The man who sees clearly can never again be deceived. And in a world built on illusion, that clarity is the ultimate rebellion.